The longer you stare at this photo, the more disturbing it gets.
Okay, so the photo I'm about to show you might be the scariest photo ever.
It's just a picture of a normal girl. But the longer you look at it, something disturbing happens. You might not be able to sleep after watching this.
This is the last picture that Sydney Loof posted to social media before she was strangled to death by her Tinder date. The man who killed her was Aubrey Trail, and he claimed when they were doing it, something happened that led to her death. However, him and his girlfriend set this entire thing up to murder this innocent girl. The court found evidence and videos of the couple purchasing bleach, saws, and trash bags leading up to her disappearance. Upon an autopsy, it was claimed that Trail cut Sydney Loof up into 14 pieces after strangling her with an electrical cord, and then dumped her body in various bags and scattered them throughout. Aubrey Trail and Bailey Boswell, his girlfriend, were convicted of first-degree murder in 2017 for this. Trail was sentenced to death, and then Boswell was sentenced to life in prison. Here's a picture of the tree. There's Loof, Trail, and Boswell all in order. And apparently for this couple, this was not their first time doing stuff like this. They would lure young women off of dating apps and use occult and witchcraft on them during intercourse. It was kind of like a sacrificial lamb type of thing going on here. This just shows the dangers of online, but don't be confused with this. Online and real life can be just as dangerous, if not the same. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and as always, these videos are for informational purposes only.
Are you choosing bear or man? If you said man, this case might make you change your mind. Amy Moore was a beautiful and intelligent second-grade teacher from Illinois. She worked at the Grove Elementary School. She was a hard-working and loving mother to 3 boys, aged 11, 12 and 7. Amy and her ex Matthew had recently got divorced. Now Amy was struggling to care for their sons all alone, and she was kind of living paycheck to paycheck. As I said, she was very hard-working and she just was trying to make ends meet so that she could look after her family. Now, tellingly, Amy had to take out orders of protection against Matthew. Tragically, Amy would be failed by the system. On the 29th of May in Normal, Illinois, the unthinkable happened. Matthew forced entry into Amy's home in the early hours of the morning. He confronted her and then shot her multiple times, killing her, before turning the weapon on himself. Amy's brother, Thomas Burns, stated that there had been numerous concerning incidents over the years, and Amy had really tried to protect herself and her family by getting law enforcement involved. Tragically, her 3 sons are now left without a mother. Thomas has since started a GoFundMe, which I'll put in my bio, to help to support the children.
The last thing that I have is was sent by one of you guys.
This is a story time. To this day, I still haven't figured out what it was. This situation happened my sophomore year of high school. We lived in this house off of like I-85 in Georgia. A single house on that highway, and there was like a really dilapidated, beat up house like next door to us. Our house had a long driveway. We had these sensors, so if anybody crossed by or any animals or any cars came into our driveway, we would know. It would beep around the whole house. One day my mom leaves. It was me and my brother alone.
A good sign.
It was my bed and the open window against it. By the headboard, it was just a window, and that window peered into the woods. I'm up about like 2, 3 a.m. Brother's asleep, whole house is dark, and I decide, okay, let me just go play some Sims. I lay down on my bed. Let me remind you, windows behind me. I open up my laptop screen to go play some Sims.
Oh my gosh!
And in that window, on my life, I could just see the blackness, and I saw a face, like a face clear as fucking day. I'm a skeptical person, but I could see a face. I jumped up. My flight or fight was I've never felt that in my life, and I felt it that moment, and I ran to my brother's room.
Imagine finding your friend's decapitated body. When this woman did just that, what she screamed was heartbreaking. It was the 2nd of November 2023 in Santa Rosa, California. Luis Gustavo Arroyo Lopez had just been released from prison. He'd spent time behind bars for assault and weapons charges. On the day in question, his nan Elvia, aged 64, was at her home. Her neighbour, Jessica, recalled seeing Elvia greet her grandson at the door and be pleasantly surprised. However, Elvia would soon end up dead. Just hours after the neighbour Jessica witnessed the first initial interaction, she then saw a friend of Elvia's enter the property and run out panicked. She was shouting, "No head." Police raced to the scene where they found the grandmother decapitated in the house. After finding out that Lewis had been at the property at around the time of the killing, officers tracked him down and arrested him. It's believed that he murdered his nan in the house and left the scene with her head. The 24-year-old has actually pleaded guilty to killing his nan and will be back in court to be sentenced soon. A motive for the killing at the moment is unknown. Elvia's family stated she was a loving person and she adored so dearly all her grandchildren. She didn't deserve what was done to her.
This one is called Los Clones.
The clones?
Yeah, basically Los Clones was a Mexican television program that aired on TV Azteca. It's without a doubt one of the most strangest, mysterious forms of lost media. There's like so little information known about it, and only because the show was only aired for like about 2 weeks to like a month before it got completely cut. Certain people were saying how maybe it's because of how the dolls that were used in the show looked.
Were creepy?
And kids that had been traumatized with the show and stuff. So basically the show had these puppets parodying famous people at that time. It could be artists, Mexican actors, politicians, and what made it creepy was that the puppets had these exaggerated facial features. For anybody who's scared of dolls, it will give you like a creepy feeling.
I have that feeling, like I hate the way dolls look. Like anything that looks human and shit and is not, bro. Especially dolls with the creepy eyes.
But let me know, guys, if you guys remember this show. Some people remember it like a fever dream, or people just having nightmares about it because of how scary and creepy the dolls look.
Oh my gosh, I don't want to see, bro.
Bueno, tal vez te hice la nariz
I can't watch this, bro. Why?
podré cepillarla como le hicieron a tu papito.
El lápiz labial invisible y el palillo de dientes con energía solar.
¿Quieres hacer el amor esta noche? Respuesta equivocada, cariño.
That shit just made me feel mad weird, bro.
Yeah, bro. People say it makes them feel uncomfortable, bro.
OD, like, you know that fight or flight feeling?
Yeah.
That shit's activated right now. Like, I feel weird.
Credit to Senna for discovering this, because I've never knew about this shit.
This is one of the most mind-blowing injuries of all time. Granny Keeley, an Irish woman, endured a life-changing car crash in 2006 when she was 22 years old at the time. She was the passenger in a car that skidded on black ice and collided with a wall. Granny's knees were then propelled into her face due to her feet being propped up on the dashboard. The impact occurred as the airbag inflated at a staggering speed of 200 miles per hour, resulting in very severe facial injuries. Almost every single bone in her face was broken and she suffered a brain leak, known as CSF leakage. Additionally, she lost 2 teeth in the traumatic accident. Following the crash, Granine underwent extensive medical procedures. Unfortunately, due to an infection, doctors had to remove her forehead, leaving her without one for 2 years. However, in 2009, surgeons managed to reconstruct her face by fitting her with a ceramic forehead. Granine humorously joked that her new forehead was made in Italy and playfully referred to it as a designer piece. This is Granine today, and she is now 38 years old, and it looks like she didn't even go through this awful experience. But sadly, she still suffers from long-lasting effects from the injury. She said, "I constantly lose my words while in the middle of a conversation. This can happen to me about 20 times a day." She also said, "I get headaches when too many people are talking around and I sometimes find it difficult to stay focused." So if you learn anything from this video, never ever put your feet on the dashboard of a car that you're in. Because you never know, this can happen to you.
You obviously know what Benadryl is, right? So back in like 2020, there was a where you have to take a certain amount, like a dozen or more, to hallucinate. I don't recommend anybody to like obviously go do it. I'm not saying to go do it, but I'm just saying like people that would hallucinate on Benadryl, it would be bad trips overall. Like they would see spiders, they would see snakes, wasps attacking them. They would hear like familiar voices and unfamiliar voices talking to them, and they would see shadowy figures, and they will also see the Hat Man. Have you ever heard about the Hat Man?
The Hat Man, no.
It's a sleep paralysis demon. So people around the world has seen this motherfucker for like years, bro. Websites dedicated to this, like people talking about their stories, stuff like that. Everybody would describe him the same way too, like a tall 6 to 8 foot person.
Bro, 6
he
to 8
wears a
foot.
fedora. You can't really see his face, only like 2 red eyes, and it's always like he's a shadowy figure.
And I remember a supporter actually talking about how they had sleep paralysis and they saw, they saw a man with a hat outside of the window, bro. And keep in mind the window is like mad fucking tall.
So I do remember seeing a story about a therapist who had like a patient, and he would always say that he would.
This Loki made me even more scared because he was just talking about like a shadow person holding up the fucking curtain.
There's a really strange missing persons case happening right now out of Utah. Let's talk about it. This is 21-year-old Elizabeth Green. She was last seen walking to work along a dirt road in Callio, Utah, which is an extremely remote area in northern Snake Valley. Like, there really isn't much out there, and the area she went missing is roughly 3 hours from any major city. Elizabeth had just started a new job at a remote ranch, and she was walking there that day, but never made it, and it's almost like she vanished into thin air. She was reported missing to the police later that day, and they began looking for her right away. Authorities have searched the area around her home and the ranch that she was going to work at, including the route that she would have taken to get there, but no trace of Elizabeth has been found. Police searched the ranch, which has not been publicly named, just one day after Elizabeth was reported missing, but according to them, they didn't find anything suspicious. The rancher said that she never made it to the ranch that day and that he had no contact with her, so it's left authorities wondering what truly happened to her that day. Police have tried pinging her phone, but they aren't able to get a connection, and they've searched all of her electronic devices, but they've all turned up nothing. There's been no activity on her social media accounts since that day either. Her mom thinks that Elizabeth could have possibly been picked up that day, but she just doesn't know by who. There's also a possibility that she arranged to have someone pick her up, but they didn't show, which could have led to Elizabeth trying to walk through the remote desert by herself. According to her family, she does suffer from some mental health issues and has ran away before, but no matter what, she's always stayed in contact with her family and she's always come back within a day. She would never just up and leave like this. Just based on the circumstances, police believe that she's in immediate danger. Like I mentioned before, Callio is extremely remote and so far away from any major city, so the fact that she just mysteriously disappeared and left behind no trace in a matter of hours is just terrifying. It's now been over a month and Elizabeth is still missing. With the summer weather coming up, we need to find out what really happened to her that day. These are some of her characteristics and what she was last seen wearing. If you have any information about this case, please contact the number on the screen.
When a teenager disappeared with her fugitive boyfriend, people feared she was dead. Absolutely nobody expected what had actually happened. It was April 2023 and Caitlin Coons was living in a foster home in Ohio. She had a history of running away and again disappeared on the month in question. A huge search began for not only Caitlin but her 33-year-old boyfriend. This was Jonathan Jones. Now, Jonathan lived at home with his mum Nicole, who reportedly disapproved of their relationship. Caitlin was obviously way younger than Jonathan, so understandably Nicole was uncomfortable with this. The search for the pair was an anxious one. Jonathan was actually wanted on child endangerment charges and indecent images. Police also considered Caitlin to be an endangered child. Posts with the pair's faces on flooded social media as members of the public desperately tried to help. Many worried that Caitlin was in harm's way. The following month, though, some apparent good news. The couple had been tracked down, both alive at the Mexican border. However, things were far from over and the case would start to get darker than anyone could have imagined. While the couple were missing, social services had phoned police. They'd received a shocking text from Caitlin's phone. She told the staff she'd killed 2 people and was on the run. It transpired that on the 18th of April, Caitlin had run away from the foster home. She'd made her way to Jonathan's mum's home with Jonathan. Now, Caitlin had resentment towards Jonathan's mum, Nicole. She felt that she was interfering with them being together. Caitlin gave Jonathan an ultimatum: kill his mum or she would kill her. She told him he had 5 hours to take action. He actually didn't, so eventually Caitlin took matters into her own hands. Caitlin bludgeoned Nicole to death with a rock and strangled her. The couple then went to the shop and bought bin bags and cleaning supplies. They horrifically both drove and got some food and ate the food together while Nicole's remains were in the boot of the car. They then drove the remains to some large bins by some apartments. Now, tragically, Nicole's remains have never been recovered and are presumably in landfill somewhere. Caitlin and Jonathan both pleaded no contest to aggravated murder and abuse of a corpse. They were both sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. Caitlin argued that she did not send the text that admitted to 2 murders.
We're asleep, and she gets up to go to the bathroom, and I'm like, oh man, I have to go to the bathroom too, so I'm going to go to the bathroom in the main bathroom outside the room. I go out, I come back in, and I'm like, why'd you turn my light on my side of the bed? Like, It's 12. We're going to bed. Like, we're in bed. She's like, I didn't do it. I thought you did. I'm like, okay, well, somebody's trying to get our attention. My phone rings. It's my little sister. She says, hey, Bob, sorry, are you awake? And I'm like, I am now. I go, my light just came on. She goes, that's why I was calling you. She said, is Nicole there? I'm like, yeah. She put her on speaker. She said, Nicole, I don't want to get personal, but did your mom have miscarriages before you? And she's like, yeah. She goes, I'm seeing 3 people in the room right now trying to get your attention. And they're your 2 brothers and your sister that weren't born.
There's actually a dark, terrifying origins to the Amber Alert. This happened in 1996 in Arlington, Texas. And it was a little girl called Amber Hagerman, who was 9 years old. And she was riding her bike at her grandparents' house along with her brother Ricky. Next to the grandparents' house was a supermarket, which was abandoned. Basically, they're riding their bike there, you know, having fun and all. The little brother decided to go back to the house. So she stayed at the parking lot. That's when a black pull-up truck pulled up to her. A man got out of the truck, grabbed Amber, threw her inside the truck, and he dipped immediately. Now, luckily, a witness was able to, see it happen from his backyard. So he called the cops immediately. The cops showed up pretty fast, bro. Like, within minutes. It was pretty fast. So there was a huge search for Amber all over Texas, basically, hoping that they could find her and see who abducted her. Even with all that happening, bro, like, they still couldn't find her. About 4 days later, there was a man who was walking his dog at midnight.
Haven't seen this photo on the internet as of late. This is just moments before 12-year-old Emma Brown took her gun and used it on her father and then herself. Last September, Emma and another 12-year-old friend devised a plan to murder Emma's family and her pets and then run away to Georgia together. Shortly after this photo, she then proceeds to shoot her father in the stomach and then run toward her driveway to take her family car to meet with her friend about 230 miles away. It's believed in this moment that Emma might have panicked and then shot herself in the process. The thing that's raised a concern is, as of right now, Emma's friend, who hasn't been publicly identified, is believed to have planned the entire ordeal. One of the biggest discussions as of late is that Emma's family had no idea how her and her friend had actually met, but she has been arrested and charged with a conspiracy to commit murder. Now, the father did end up surviving the incident, but now conversations are being struck throughout the entire internet about whether or not parents know who their children's friends are. The police have also raised concerns and reports blaming social media for this occurrence. So the question now is, was this a preventable incident?
He was friendly and he was nice and he was so funny. He was so funny. He would always have me laughing. We used to play this game called Kick the Can, and he was the fastest runner, so we always wanted to be on his team.
Richard's friend Patricia found him kind and caring.
If we wanted to take a shortcut to school, we had to cut through this really tough neighborhood. And he always used to wait for me, sitting on a little pony wall, and then he would walk me to school. It was always safer, to be in twos, I guess. He used to sit in back of me in 5th grade, and I remember that he would poke me in the back. And every time he would poke me, I would jump up. And so that time that he kept poking me, I turned around very upset, and I said, hey, stop. And I remember him like slumping over and then just hitting the floor on the side.
He would have seizures. He would be shaking. We knew he was sick.
Third murder, which is the second incident, okay? I'm in the middle of trying to get my record sealed, right? Thursday night, I killed her. I took off Friday. I didn't go to work. I called in sick, took CTO, all right? Dismembered her body, got rid of her body, but kept her head in her hands because they're identifiable. They're highly identifiable. I kept those at the apartment, okay? That Friday night, Thursday night, I took her. Friday morning, she was dismembered. Friday night, she was disposed of, right? Saturday morning, I left, right? And I wasn't satisfied that I took the head along in the hands, but I couldn't put them someplace that could be sure they would be dug up by an animal or just be somewhere. It's scary going out there trying to bury somebody or dispose of body parts in a community or out even in the boonies where you don't know where you're at and who can come up at any moment. I had some real close calls there. There are people that come out of nowhere. And if a body's found and they remember this beige-looking car sitting there the night, that's evidence. So it was very, very hard to get rid of this stuff.
For the record, you are guilty of killing many women and girls.
Yes. Yes, that's true.
Ted, how did it happen? Take me back. What are the antecedents of the behavior that we've seen? So much grief, so much sorrow, so much pain for so many people. Where did it start? How did this moment come about?
I grew up in a wonderful home with two dedicated and loving parents, one of 5 brothers and sisters. But as a young boy, and I mean a boy of 12 or 13, certainly, that I encountered outside the home again, the local grocery store, the local drugstore, the softcore pornography, what people call softcore. As young boys do, we explored the back roads and sideways and byways of our neighborhood, and oftentimes people would dump the garbage and whatever they were cleaning out of their house, and from time to time we'd come across pornographic books of a harder nature than more graphic, you might say, more explicit nature than we would encounter, let's say, in your local grocery store.
2022, the town of Slaughter, Louisiana, was shaken by the death of 36-year-old Lacey Fletcher. Lacey suffered from a medical condition known as locked-in syndrome, making her almost completely paralyzed. Due to her medical condition, Lacey spent all of her life at home, as she began to develop some degree of Asperger's syndrome. Lacey's parents were her caretakers, although they neglected that responsibility and treated Lacey inhumanely, leaving her to relieve herself on the same couch that she spent most of her life. Lacey's neighbors stated that the last time they saw her in public was 15 years before this incident. At the time of her death, Lacey weighed 96 pounds and had contracted COVID-19. On January 3rd, 2022, Lacey was found dead in a couch covered in feces and urine. It was believed that she was in that same spot for years without being catered to. Her body was covered in ulcers, her hair matted and filled with maggots. Her parents, Sheila and Clay Fletcher, were charged with second-degree murder and detained for the severe chronic neglect. Despite all of this, they pleaded not guilty and were released on bail. Sheila and Clay Fletcher will begin trial on June 19th, 2023.
This influencer's body parts were found in pots of human soup just last month. On the 15th of February, 28-year-old model Abby Choi posted a beautiful photo on her Instagram. She had no idea of her horrific fate less than 2 weeks later. On February the 25th, 2023, police made a horrifying discovery. A splatter-proof makeshift butcher's workshop was found in a rented 3-story home. Inside of the home, they found 2 human legs in a fridge and Abby's decapitated head in a soup pot. Alongside the head, carrots and radishes were also in the process of being cooked. Minced human meat was also found at the scene. In the rented flat, police found a homemade butcher's shop equipped with meat grinders, chainsaws and meat cleavers. Abby's handbag was also found at the scene, including her ID, which helped to identify her. Heartbreakingly, Abby was a mother of 4 young children. Police in Hong Kong have charged Abby's ex-husband, Alex Kwong, his father and brother with the murder. It's alleged that the 3 men rented an apartment where they'd meticulously planned the murder. It's also alleged that the motive for the killing was a family dispute over money. Abby's children are now being looked after by her mother.
Yeah. And you asked me to come here from California because you had something you wanted to say. It is not just an interview with a man who's scheduled to die tomorrow morning. I am here and you're here because of this message that you're talking about right here. You really feel that hardcore pornography and the doorway to it, softcore pornography, is doing untold damage to other people and causing other women to be abused and killed the way you did others.
Listen, I'm no social scientist and I haven't done a survey. I mean, I don't pretend that I know what John Q. Citizen thinks about this. But I've lived in prison for a long time now. And I've met a lot of men who were motivated to commit violence just like me. And without exception, every one of them was deeply involved in pornography, without question, without exception, deeply influenced and consumed by an addiction to pornography. There's no question about it. The FBI's own study on serial homicide shows that the most common interest among serial killers is pornography.
That's true.
And it's real. It's true.
Ted, what would your life have been like without that influence? You can only speculate.
Yeah. 911, where's your emergency? I just killed someone. 100, Route 46. What do you mean you just killed someone? Exactly what I said. I'm armed and dangerous. Where are you? You know what? I'm armed, I'm dangerous, send the cops out. I'm in a parking lot, I can see from every angle. I will shoot at anyone who approaches the car. Okay. How many people did you hurt? You know, I'm not in a condition to talk. Okay, can you at least tell me what city you're in so I can send the police out there? Mountain Lake. You're in Mountain Lakes? Yeah. How many people did you kill? Just one person? Just one person. Just one person? I'm reloading right now. I'm going to shoot at anybody that approaches the car. Okay, that's not a problem, sir. I'd advise you not to reload and do that, but... What's your name? You just hung up on me.
10-year-old serial killer. Viewer discretion is advised. This is Mary Bell, and she could easily be one of the most sadistic murderers in history, even though she was only 10 years old. Mary allegedly grew up being abused, and her mother would even sell her to other men at the age of 5. All of this abuse fueled this anger inside of her, and she had to find some sort of way to release it. On May 11th, 1968, Mary Bell was playing with a little 3-year-old toddler, and he mysteriously fell off of an air raid shelter. This was the start of her violent outrage. Just 2 weeks later, on March 25th, the boy Martin Brown's body was found dead inside of an abandoned building. It was later discovered that Mary lured this little boy into this abandoned building and strangled him with her bare hands. 2 years later, Mary then strangled a 3-year-old boy and carved the letter M into his stomach with a razor blade. And then she used scissors to cut and mutilate the body. Mary eventually confessed to this by writing notes because she was bragging about it, and the police arrested her. Here's the crazy thing. She was arrested and released just a couple years later, and today she could possibly still be alive. One of the terms for her confession was that after she was released, her name would be changed and everything. The latest information we have of her is pretty much she had a daughter when she got released, and nobody knows where she's at now. So what do you think? Do you think she should be forgiven because she was a child, or do you think that fire is still inside of her waiting to strike again? Let me know in the comments down below, and make sure to like and follow for more videos.
One of the strangest missing persons cases I've ever seen revolves around someone that might not even exist. Let me explain. In 1989, a local Chicago television station called WMAQ was wrapping up their regularly scheduled television for the night, when all of a sudden the audio was cut and the image on screen was changed to a strange missing persons panel. The image of the individual shown was too low quality to make out any details, and no information other than the woman's name, Joanna Lopez, were given. The broadcast wouldn't be too out of the ordinary if it wasn't for the fact that she was never mentioned anywhere again. And when people tried to find her, they found no records of a woman named Joanna Lopez in Chicago, even with police filings. So, who was this woman in the broadcast? And how did a missing persons panel for her end up on the news? Well, when the news agency was asked about the panel, they claimed it was sent by an anonymous person, which leaves us with the most likely answer being that it was a prank or an alternate reality game. And as for who was actually in the photo, the lead seems to be a woman by the name of Rachel Lopez. A photo of her was found in a West Chicago yearbook from 1990, and although she has a different first name than Joanna, the fact that they look so similar and share a last name leads many to believe that she could be the one in the photo. Sadly though, it seems like we may never know for sure, as no one has been able to contact the woman in the yearbook.
In 2007, Knoxville, Tennessee was rocked by the brutal murder of 21-year-old Shannon Christian and 23-year-old Christopher Newsom. Shannon and Christopher were headed to a party on the night of January 6th. When they didn't show up to the party, the couple's friends started texting and calling them, but received no response. Around 11 p.m. that evening, a couple of their friends went to Shannon's apartment to see if they were there. Shannon and Christopher were not at the apartment, and they were unable to locate Shannon's SUV. It turns out that the couple were victims of a carjacking and kidnapping. The couple was taken to a rental home where they were essayed, tortured, and murdered. A witness arrived at work around 12:30 a.m. on January 7th. He noticed that the lights of the rental home were on and the home seemed quite busy for that time of night. The witness later observed a white 4Runner slowly drive by him with 4 men in the car. Another witness stated that they heard gunshots around 1:45 a.m. near the railroad tracks. That afternoon, around 12 p.m., Christopher's body was found near the tracks, wrapped in a comforter. Shannon was failing to respond to calls and text messages all day long. Using the last ping from her cell phone, authorities found her white 4Runner. On January 9th, authorities went to the rental home and found her body in a trash can in the kitchen. There were 5 people who helped commit this sickening crime, 4 of which were convicted to life in prison without parole, and 1 was convicted to the death penalty.
911, what's the location of the emergency? Please help me! Yes, what address do you need help? I'm not on an address, I'm on a road, on Myers Road! He's trying to kill me! Which road are you on? Myers Road in Oregon City! Okay, do you have an address? Listen. Be late, come on, get a cop here now! Okay, who's trying to kill you? My husband! He's trying to pick up truck! Okay, what? He's trying to kill me! Come on! He's trying to die! And what kind of gun does he have? Ma'am, take a deep breath so I can understand you. Ma'am, I've already got help coming. I need you to tell me wire and what? On plan. I'm on plan. Wire. Just a minute. I'm walking. He shot me. Okay, you're on wire at Glenview Court? He shot me. Okay, where did he shoot you? In the chest. In the chest? He's over there.
Baby Burger, uno de los casos más traumáticos, atroces y perturbadores de la Deep Web. Todo comienza con una cámara de seguridad apuntando hacia una calle, en donde se observa a una mujer que va caminando con su bebé. Sabemos que es una bebé, porque la madre dio su declaración a la policía de lo que pasó aquella vez. Después, se observa que un automóvil llega y 2 sujetos salen rápidamente. Uno de ellos toma a la mujer y la empuja, mientras que el otro sujeto, toma a la bebé y la mete dentro del automóvil para así escapar. La toma del video continúa en un bosque. Los sujetos aparecen con un pasamontañas, para no ser identificados. Proceden a sacar a la bebé del automóvil, para llevarla a lo más profundo del bosque, hasta llegar a un lugar donde hay una mesa muy grande. El otro sujeto, procede a traer un aparato, el cual en este momento del video está cubierto por una tela amarilla. Uno de los sujetos toma a la bebé y la coloca en la mesa, para empezar a abusar de ella, en un terrible acto donde escuchamos los gritos que son desgarradores. El volumen del video sube exageradamente, provocando la risa de uno de los sujetos. Después, procede a darle algunas bofetadas, a lo que comienza a sangrar de la boca. Uno de los sujetos toma a la bebé de los pies, el otro, toma el artefacto quitándole la tela amarilla. Vemos que es una máquina para triturar troncos de árboles. Encienden la máquina y el sujeto posa frente a la cámara, dejando caer a la bebé. La cámara hace un enfoque a la caída de la bebé en dicha máquina, a lo que ésta se llena de sangre, igual que las camisas de los 2 sujetos. Finalmente, la cámara enfoca a la carne molida que sale de la máquina, para que los 2 sujetos comiencen a comerla.
If I didn't know this was a true crime case, I would think it was a disturbing horror film. On the morning of the 7th of October 2022, a barefoot woman was running around Excelsior Springs, Missouri, bashing on people's doors. Witnesses describe her looking like she came straight from a horror film and she was calling for help. She'd been beaten, held captive and SA'd for weeks. The woman was a shocking sight. She was covered in injuries and was wearing a bin bag. Disturbingly, she was gasping for breath as she had a very tight metal collar locked round her neck. It was a nurse who opened the door to her and let her come in. The nurse started to call police, and at this point the woman panicked. She warned her that the captor would kill her and claimed that he had killed her 2 friends. When police got there, the woman explained that a man called Timothy had captured her the month prior. He'd been holding her hostage this whole time. She said he'd been keeping her locked in the basement and had been SAing her. Disturbingly, she told police that he actually had a young son who lived at the house with him. When Timothy had taken his young son to school the one day, she used it as her opportunity to escape. Police made their way to the home of 39-year-old Timothy Hazlitt Jr. and found the property did in fact have a basement like the woman described. Timothy was arrested and is facing 9 charges including first-degree kidnapping. He's being held on a $3 million bond and faces 5 life sentences. Before his arrest, police were actually called to his address 3 times. Twice they were asked to do welfare checks, and this was from an employer and also family members. Police have searched his home with cadaver dogs and they haven't yet released what they know.
What? Look in there, mate. Look in there. What? Look in there.
Mysterious case absolutely does not sit right with me. Someone knows something and has not come forward. On the 12th of July 2015, 18-year-old Tiffany and her parents attended a graduation party in New Jersey. At around 9 p.m, one of Tiffany's friends spoke to her parents and claimed that they were really annoyed because Tiffany had used their debit card without permission. Tiffany initially denied this to her friend, but then did admit this to her mum Diane a little bit later. At this point, they were all outside Tiffany's house and Diane went inside to find her husband. When she returned outside of the house, Tiffany had vanished. Now, they were able to see Tiffany on the deer cameras that they had outside the house. She appears to be walking down the driveway in her normal clothing and white headband. When they tried to find Tiffany, they actually made a terrifying discovery. Her phone was lying on the floor at the bottom of the driveway. Immediately, they knew something was wrong as Tiffany never had her phone out of her sight. At 11:30 p.m, her family called the police. Little did they know, 27 minutes earlier, Tiffany had been hit by a train. Frustratingly, pretty much straight away, police presumed this death to be a self-unaliving. However, that just didn't seem to fit with the evidence presented. All of Tiffany's family and friends said how much of an upbeat person she was and that she was really happy at the time. She was making plans for the future, and the autopsy also showed that she had a clean toxicology report. Now, in the deer cam footage, she was fully clothed, but when she was found, she was just in her underwear with no shoes on. Upsettingly, 2 weeks after her death, Tiffany's mum actually found her missing trainers and headband more than a mile away from the tracks. Could someone have murdered Tiffany and then dumped her body on the train tracks to make it look like she did this herself? Tiffany's parents certainly think so. They definitely suspect some foul play was involved.
This is Japan's youngest murdered at only 11 years old. Nevada murdered her best friend.
I honestly think this is one of the most interesting and messed up cases ever. And if you haven't heard about this case, click in that video and she'll give you the gist of what happened. When I first heard about this case, I saw every video, read every article about it. Anything I could find, I saw it or read it. And after so much research about it, I found some things that not a lot of people know about this case. For example, the first thing is this is not Nevada. This is somebody wearing a costume of Nevada. Yes, a costume, like in Halloween, dressing up as an 11-year-old murderer. This is an actual picture of her, one of few pictures that we have of actual Nevada. There's a lot of more pictures of people dressing up as her, but I don't want to show them because some are really gruesome and I just don't think there's anything cute or funny about dressing up as a murderer. So yeah, some even try to make it sexy. It's just I don't know, I just think it's weird. Another thing is that, I mean, this is not the real girl, but for the sake of the video, the actual Nevada, that's not her real name. Nevada is not her name. It's just what people started calling her because she had that sweater on when she did the murder. Nevada Tan. Due to Nevada being so young at the time of the murder, her name was not sent to public to keep her safe in her identity. They never know her name because now she's out of jail and she has changed her name, probably changed states. She could be in the US, we don't know. But yeah, we're probably never gonna know her name.
This is one of the most disgusting and evil cases I've heard of recently. On the 7th of December 2017, teacher Thelma Boinville was desperately trying to make some extra money. She was doing a cleaning job to earn extra money for her family, and the job suited her as her 8-year-old could come along and play while she worked. This was really handy as it meant she didn't have to fork out for childcare. She set out cleaning some holiday homes on the day in question, and her daughter waited in the car. The spot was a lovely scenic place called Kelky Beach. However, instead of walking in on a normal holiday rental to clean, she walked into a nightmare. Stephen Brown and his girlfriend Hayley Dangerand were in the middle of robbing the place. They were scouring through drawers and wardrobes, hunting for valuables to steal. With Thelma walking in, their plan had been foiled. They decided they needed to dispose of their only witness. The evil pair tied up the mother, whose daughter waited unsuspectingly in the car outside. They used a machete, a knife, and a hammer to murder the innocent woman. But the horror was far from over. They exited the holiday home and came across Thelma's young daughter waiting in the car. They callously told the young girl, "We killed your mum," and then bound her up and gagged her. Sickeningly, they then took the 8-year-old into the home where they'd killed her mum and left her there tied up. The 2 Australian tourists who were renting the holiday home then came back and found the crime scene. The 2 killers were tracked down hours later in Thelma's car, which they'd stolen and driven off in. Hayley was actually wearing her victim's earrings at the time. They actually begged for the officers to just shoot them and end their lives, but they wouldn't get away that easily. Thelma's husband Kevin wasn't actually allowed to see his wife's body due to the extent of her injuries. The autopsy revealed that she'd fought for her life, with many defensive wounds indicating a struggle. Since the murder, Stephen and Hayley have both tried to blame each other. Stephen was found guilty of second-degree murder and apparently showed no emotion as the verdict was read out. Hayley is currently awaiting trial.
Now that it's summertime, here are 3 of the scariest theme park accidents I've ever heard of. These stories are ordered to get more intense as it goes on, so if the first story is too much for you, then you probably don't want to stick around for the third. On June 21st, 2007, 13-year-old Caitlin Lassiter went to Six Flags of Kentucky. While she was here, she decided to go on the Superman drop ride. This is the kind of ride that lifts you up really high into the air and then it drops you down really fast. However, when their car got to the top, a cable snapped and became undone. This cable became wrapped around Caitlin's throat and feet. She was able to untangle the cord from around her neck, but she wasn't able to get to her feet before the ride dropped, and both of her feet were pulled off. They were able to attach one, but she did end up becoming an amputee. On June 2nd, 2015, the Smiler roller coaster in the UK was having several problems, and one of the test cars got stuck in the middle of the track. However, the employees hadn't communicated with each other that they had added a 5th car, so everyone thought there were 4. So when they saw all 4 cars at the station ready to go, they assumed that the test was done. They then loaded a car full of passengers and sent it down the track, not realizing that a car was already sitting stationary in the middle. The car with passengers inside rear-ended the empty car, resulting in serious injuries. The 2 girls that were sitting in the front of the car had to have their legs amputated. And the horror of this was all made worse because it took emergency services 4 to 5 hours to reach them as everybody was sitting mangled on this roller coaster. The Verrückt water slide was the world's tallest water slide in August 2016, where our 3rd accident happened. This water slide had an extremely steep drop and then a hill, and 3 people would sit in each boat. The owner of the water park had actually self-insured this slide because it was too dangerous for any insurance company to take on. In August 2016, Caleb Schwab went to the water park with his family, and the very first ride he wanted to go on was Verrückt. Caleb sat in the front and was too lightweight to weigh it down, so the ride went airborne. Then everyone watched in horror as the front of the slide impacted the metal safety railing that arched over the top of the slide. He flew out of the raft but hit the netting so hard that he was, It was quick for Caleb, but not for the crowd, as they then had to watch the boat finish the ride as the water began to run red. A guest at the park physically restrained Caleb's mom so she couldn't walk over and see what happened. So the last image she has of her son is excited to go on the ride and stepping into the line.
Hammer coined the phrase, "You can't make this stuff up," might have known the story of real-life boogeyman, Albert Fish. A slight, elderly man with grey hair, no one suspected the kindly single father of being sadistic child murderer and cannibal.
Okay, so did Mr. Beast go to an Illuminati meeting? So, Mr. Beast was recently on a podcast when he said this.
Not much I can say, but there's just like this super exclusive event with just all these really rich and famous people. And I just did not belong there at the time. And he was just one of them. And,
How'd you get invited to that event? Island in the Bahamas?
Well, I think it was. It was like I remember pulling. I just can't say too much, but I just remember pulling up, and there's like dozens of guys with just like assault and stuff, and I was like, oh, it's like that high level of an event. And and he just was like, so I ended up talking up there. So it's like, I don't even know how to put into words. Like everyone there was either like ultra famous or just like a billionaire. They're like it was crazy having all those people in that room. And then at dinner, they just pair you up with random people, so you meet new people, and there's the one at the table, and we just.
So yeah, after hearing Mr. Beast talk about it and say it, do you think he went to an Illuminati party? Or do you think it was just some high-end party with no relation to the Illuminati? I honestly have no clue, but let me know what you think about this whole thing.
Let's talk about the Micah Miller case. Buckle up, this is going to be a wild ride. So Micah Miller here has a husband, JP Miller. Now, JP is a pastor, and Micah filed for divorce against him. JP went through Micah's phone, finding people from the congregation that had contacted her, saying they support her, if they need anyone to talk to, they're there for her. Now, people from the congregation supported Micah Miller, and this is what JP said in regards to that. If somebody wants to call you and talk bad about someone else, that's a demon talking. Kind of just dismissing all the horrible things he did to Micah Miller. JP went on to slash her tires, track her down, harass her at the gas station. Micah would end up calling the police 3 times over the next 4 days. And she even told an officer at one point, "I am fearful for my life." 6 weeks later, Micah is found dead in a park in North Carolina. The police ruled her death as a suicide. However, that might not be the case, and I don't believe that. JP Miller has been silent on this. He is refusing to talk to the media or anybody about this entire case. The family of Micah is pushing for investigators to look deeper into this, because none of them believe that this is a suicide either. The death of his wife actually uncovered a ton of stuff he was doing behind the scenes. So not only was he a pastor, he owned a bar. Now, it wouldn't be really weird for anybody to own a bar, but a pastor owning a bar, kind of weird to me. And guess what else Pastor JP Miller got exposed for? Touching underage girls. On top of that, he also has an abusive history with women. If his wife isn't an example of that, I don't know what is. He also blamed every single problem in their marriage on Micah Miller. At the end of his sermon, he told the church about her death, just ruled it as a suicide, and told everyone just go home, no more questions. But he encouraged everybody to keep attending, and lo and behold, literally like a week or 2 after her death, he's on a date with a woman in Charleston, North Carolina. Because he was on a date with this woman, he was cleared of all charges regarding Micah Miller's death. However, it is suspicious still. J.P. Miller's last wife, Allison, divorced him because he was caught having an affair with Micah Miller. On top of that, Micah Miller claimed that J.P. Miller groomed her because she was 15 at the time when they met. Now, she was 30 at the time of her death and when they were married. But now knowing his history with underage girls, being unfaithful to his previous wife, this is super, super believable. J.P. Miller's own children don't even feel safe with him. One text from the child was begging Micah to come home. Back in 2017, this guy also hit a woman with his truck and continued driving with her on the hood for 100 yards. And for the most part, JP Miller got off with a slap on the wrist for most of these because he was a respected pastor in that area. There is so much to cover. I'm not sure if you guys want me to keep going. I can literally keep going. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you want to keep going, let me know your thoughts on this general story. But I think enough has been said. This is just a horrible human being. And I think investigators, if they're not doing it right now, they need to look deeper into this case. I don't think the community investigators in that area are reliable right now. They need to bump it up and get some national investigators involved. Someone without a bias. But let me know your thoughts. And as always, these videos are for informational purposes only.
This teenager was brutally executed by the cartel, and whatever you do, don't look up the video. The video that I'm about to explain has little to no backstory, but in some groups there's a vague backstory behind it, but I don't know how true it is. The backstory is as follows. Allegedly, the victim in the video is the son of a cartel boss, and the execution was carried out by a rival cartel in order to send a message. Some even claim the video was recorded so it could be sent to the father. What cartel did this disturbing act is a mystery and nobody knows for sure, and the cartel the victim is related to is also unknown. The video is 2 minutes and 27 seconds long, and the clip is recorded in the middle of the night in a desolate location. As you play the video, you realize that the sound is messed up. You hear the wind in the background, but not the victim talking. The victim can be seen kneeling on the ground, and he looks like a teenager. He seems to have his hands tied behind his back. He's also been badly beaten off camera that one of his eyes had become so bruised that it's swollen shut. A cartel member is standing behind him and is holding the victim's hair, propping his head up to look at the camera. You can see the victim speak, but you can't hear what he is saying. The cartel member stands ominously behind as he carries a combat knife in his hand. The poor teenage victim looks utterly terrified as he sits waiting for his life to end. Then, out of nowhere, 20 seconds into the video, the cartel member violently pulls the victim by the hair, which causes the victim to panic. He then takes the combat knife and begins to cut him on his trachea. Instantly, the victim is pulled to the floor and put on his side. The killer with the blade then cuts through the trachea as the victim grimaces his teeth in pain. Blood begins to stain the ground and the blade cuts through the victim's windpipe like a hot blade cutting through butter. All of a sudden, you then start to hear a sound, although it's very distorted. I think the person filming on the mobile phone may have had his finger over the microphone. You hear the sounds of labor breathing and the sounds of blood squelching. The sound is cutting in and out, and you also hear a few groans. After a few seconds, the blade is cut through the neck and the victim is almost half decapitated. However, you still see him trying to move and he continues to grit his teeth in pain. The killer then cuts around the sides and back of his neck, and you can see the white of his spinal cord. It's utterly disturbing, and suddenly the sound gets louder and you hear horrific sounds coming from the victim. The sounds in these videos are always extremely hard to explain, but it almost sounds like violent snoring mixed with the sounds of bubbling blood. When the victim tries to breathe, it sounds like a straw trying to suck up the last drop of a drink. The killer has a tough time cutting through the spinal cord, so he takes the knife and lines the tip of the blade onto the spinal cord, and starts to use the palm of his hand to hammer the knife into the victim's spine. And you hear it crunch as it happens. The killer then takes the blade and begins sawing back and forth on the victim's spine, and this creates a horrible grinding sound. You then start to hear chatter in the background from a few cartel members. However, unlike the majority of cartel videos, the cartel members are quiet and whispering. They are not talking that much, and possibly the horrific nature of the act is extreme for them also, given the age of the victim. The beheading is then complete and the killer holds up the head to the camera. The lifeless look on the severed head is absolutely haunting as you see blood drip to the ground. The identity of the victim is unknown, as well as his age, but my guess is he is around 14 years old, which makes this case even more shocking. Even the behavior from the cartel members were strange, and they weren't like they are in other videos. This just goes to show the brutal reality of Mexican cartels, and nobody is ever safe, even with your age and status.
This is Luna County Deputy Paul Garcia. On November 11th, 2023, he recklessly killed this beautiful little baby boy, 14-month-old Wyatt James. This is his story. On November 11th of last year, Deputy Paul Garcia was responding to an active burglary call in Deming, New Mexico. Dashcam video shows Paul and another officer recklessly going upwards of 130 miles per hour on Highway 11. And during that call, Paul crashed into a car. Inside that car was Isabella and her 14-month-old beautiful baby, Wyatt. Isabella was knocked unconscious and suffered severe injuries, and when she woke up, she couldn't breathe, yet she was trying to ask where her baby was. The dashcam video that was released is incredibly disturbing because it shows responding officers trying to save baby Wyatt's life and performing CPR on his body outside of the car. But sadly, he was taken to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. He died of blunt trauma directly as a result from Deputy Paul Garcia driving recklessly. What has come to light during this investigation, though, is just horrible. Paul had a criminal history prior to joining the Luna County Sheriff's Office. In 2015, he was charged with an aggravated DWI and 3 counts of child abuse. This all stemmed from him driving drunk with 3 people under the age of 18 in his car. According to reports, while he was being arrested for that, he willingly admitted to having another DWI prior to that in Texas. So in total, Paul had 2 DWIs in 2015, and then just a year later went on to become a deputy with the Luna County Sheriff's Office. The fact that he wasn't screened or vetted before being hired or sworn in as an officer is incredibly alarming, and everyone needs to know this. Paul has since been charged with homicide by vehicle, and Isabella has filed a civil case against him and the Luna County commissioners. But as of right now, literally as I'm making this video, justice has not been served. A preliminary hearing was supposed to take place on May 16th, but Paul had it waived and a new date has not been set yet. And to make matters worse, this is a statement from the Luna County Sheriff's Office. He's been put on a paid leave for killing an innocent baby. According to the department's policy, officers who are responding to a call with their lights and sirens on can't legally go more than 20 miles per hour over the posted speed limit. That day, when he crashed into Isabella, he was going 99 miles per hour. The speed limit was 55, yet it's like he's getting a slap on the wrist for breaking the law and taking an innocent life, a baby's life. I know I'm not the only one that feels this way, but the Luna County Sheriff's Office was negligent for hiring him. Deputy Paul Garcia was reckless. He endangered an entire community and needs to be held accountable. And it's just like what this retired officer said. It doesn't do you any good if you're responding to a hot call, if your driving is so reckless that you're involved in a crash and don't get there. He reportedly hasn't even apologized to Isabella for what happened that day, and according to her, she's even received threats from his family and friends telling her to be careful what she says. Her voice and Wyatt's story cannot be silenced. Isabella is here on TikTok telling her baby's story, fighting for justice. Please go follow her and show her some support. I'm going to leave you with a video of her and Wyatt's dad, William. Please listen and share their story.
It's not fair. This Luna County officer gets to go home to his son. Meanwhile, if I want to see mine, I have to go to the cemetery. I visit Wyatt often, and I usually go when they're about to close so I can read him his bedtime stories just like before.
The worst feeling in the world when you hug your child for the last time and they're ice cold. My first and only son was taken from our family because of a reckless and dangerous driver. Only 2 months after his first birthday. He didn't even make it to his second Christmas.
This stunning cheerleader vanished on holiday. It would take another shocking murder before her killer would face any kind of justice. In May 2005, Natalie Holloway was in the mood to celebrate. The 18-year-old had just graduated from high school and was heading to Aruba with her classmates for the holiday of a lifetime. 124 other seniors joined Natalie in Aruba. On the 30th of the month, they were in a nightclub. It's believed that they left around 1:30 in the morning, and Natalie tried to get a lift back to the Holiday Inn. Concerningly, she never showed up at the airport the next day to get her return flight home. Her packed luggage and her passport were both found in her room at the Holiday Inn. Now this obviously rang alarm bells. What on earth had happened to Natalie after she left that nightclub? Her mum and stepdad were panicked and flew to Aruba. There was one prime suspect, a male that Natalie had been seen with getting into a car for a lift back to the Holiday Inn. This was 17-year-old Jordan van der Sloot. A friend of Natalie's confirmed that they had actually been speaking to Jordan that evening. They'd seen him several times. Now what they didn't know, and what would be revealed later, is he had somewhat of a reputation in the local area. He was known to be predatory to tourists. Now when police questioned him, he insisted that he and two other males had dropped Natalie off at her hotel at around 2 a.m. Now Jordan claimed to police that he'd actually dropped Natalie off and seen her talking with two security guards. Police then arrested the two security guards on suspicion of kidnap, but soon released them. They knew it was in fact Jordan that they needed to investigate. Jordan was arrested along with the two other males from the car, the Calpo brothers, aged 18 and 21. They were all questioned, and suddenly the trio's stories all began to change and contradict each other. Now this was obviously a massive red flag, and then Jordan's story changed massively. He stated that as Natalie left the vehicle, she slipped and hit her head, and he left her injured on the side of the road. He insisted that she was alive at this point. Now, frustratingly, with no body, police were at somewhat of a dead end. The three men, frustratingly, were set free. An agonizing ordeal ensued for Natalie's loved ones. There were multiple arrests over the years, but frustratingly, due to lack of evidence, people kept being released. There were also multiple theories flying around about potentially Natalie being disposed of by drug runners. Tip-offs would consistently lead to dead ends, and Natalie's family suffered the agony of having so much false hope. Then in February 2010, Jordan's dad died. Jordan then sent an email to Natalie's family stating, "My father's dead, I have nothing to hide. For $250,000 I will tell you what happened to Natalie." The family ended up actually paying him $25,000 initially, and stated that if he led them to where he claimed that Natalie was, and Natalie was there, they'd give him the rest of the money. He led investigators to an area, and it turned out to be a lie. This, however, enabled the FBI to actually arrest him with extortion. Sickeningly, he would later admit to wanting to get back at Natalie's family. He stated, quote, "Her parents have been making my life tough for 5 years." Now, tragically, before he could be arrested for this crime, he fled to Peru. This trip would prove to be fatal. On the 30th of May 2010, exactly 5 years to the day that Natalie vanished, Jordan met Stephanie Flores. She was just 21 years old. The two visited a casino before heading back to Jordan's hotel room. Chillingly, Stephanie was reported missing shortly after. 48 hours later, she was found dead in Jordan's hotel room with a broken neck. It transpired that Stephanie had discovered incriminating evidence on Jordan's computer. This linked him to Natalie's murder. When Stephanie found this, she confronted Jordan. He then murdered her too. He was given 28 years in prison for Stephanie's killing. Jordan would eventually admit to killing Natalie when he made sexual advances to her that she refused. He admitted to kicking her hard in the face after she kicked him in the crotch to get him off her. He said he then hit her with a cinder block. He then claimed to have dragged her body to the ocean. However, we obviously can't 100% trust Jordan. We know he has a track record of lying. As he took a plea deal, frustratingly, he may actually never be prosecuted for Natalie's murder. She was declared legally dead in 2012. Now, heartbreakingly, her remains have never been found, and she's never been able to have a proper burial. Now, I'd really recommend watching the documentary series, The Disappearance of Natalie Holloway. It's an absolutely fascinating and really gripping documentary series. This isn't an ad, it's just the fact that me and my friend watched the whole documentary series in one evening because we were so hooked on it. The case and what the family went through in the search for justice for Natalie is just so extensive. I haven't been able to really do it justice in this video.